actually cloudy burbs, North Chicago burbs.
Lovely. Well, we're down in Perth, Western Australia. It was a lovely day here as always, but that is Australia for you. So, Andy, tell everyone who you are and what it is you do.
Sure. So I am a LinkedIn branding strategy guy. Typically, people come to me if they are looking to leverage LinkedIn fully. So they understand that it's important, but for one reason or another, they're not getting any traction, or they're not achieving any of their objectives. And they typically, Megan, they see something that I've written, and that I think persuades them that I'm certainly a wordsmith. So, I can write, I can string sentences together. I know a little or a lot about LinkedIn, depending on what area we're talking about. And I'm a marketer. So, I know how to position myself, and therefore, in theory, right, I should be able to help other people do the same thing. And it's all about content with me, Megan. It's all about, pushing out as much value out there as possible. And that's, I think, the way that you sell. That's the way that you sell yourself. That's how you achieve your objectives in the end. And LinkedIn has made it so easy for everyone to use content as a way to persuade and influence. So I'm all about that ability and that approach. I believe firmly that everyone has multiple stories to tell, and that everyone is endlessly fascinating, right? There's something inherently interesting about people, full stop. But I think that the key is to pull out those stories, right? What is this person's narrative? What do they have to share? Yeah. And I think that's where the true value lies, and I'm pretty sure that's exactly what you think too. I'm sure that's part of your branding cocktail.
Oh, look, that's why I was so drawn to you in the first place, Andy, is because there's so many people on LinkedIn or on other platforms trying to pull you over to LinkedIn, telling you how they'll make you $10,000 in your first month. And it's all about the dollars. Whereas I'm in the branding space as well. I focus very much just on the personal branding strategy and its overall, and it may include LinkedIn. For some people, it might not. But I never say to someone, oh, look, $10,000, work with me and you'll earn $10,000, because branding isn't an exercise where you turn it on and you instantly make money. It is a long game, and it's something that you commit to and you have to show up on all the time. I'm like you. I think LinkedIn is one of the best platforms to be doing that online at the moment. Nothing will ever beat face-to-face, in my opinion. You just can't replicate that. But LinkedIn comes as close to it as I think we're possibly going to get, although there's more still to come. I'm sure, there's lots of platforms popping up and different technology, but yeah, so that's why I was drawn to you in the first place. Now, a lot of my Instagram followers will be semi-familiar with you already, because I share a lot of your content over there, some of your ideas, especially about the algorithm and how that works. Andy makes it so consumable. You really do make it really consumable for people to be able to understand the benefits of LinkedIn. Can you, because there'll be a few people that are watching tonight or listening to the podcast later on that are still on the fence about LinkedIn, why do you think it is so powerful?
Yeah. So before I get there, I just want to go back to some of the stuff you said, that it is the long game. Do you know Mary Henderson?
Yes.
So Mary Henderson has this amazing approach to LinkedIn. She's built this from the ground up. She's built this magazine called Authority 5.0. I call her the Forbes of LinkedIn, because that's essentially what she's become, and she's built it herself, bootstrapped it. She's amazing. Anyway, so I mentioned that because I just recently wrote an article called Two Crazy LinkedIn Theories and the Long Game. And it is a long game, because I'm very fond of saying that I'm an overnight success that took 10 years. Yeah. And I think that, because you know this yourself, right? It takes so long to build anything, especially on a platform like LinkedIn. And it seems like it's a snail's pace progress, right? And that's, I think, the biggest disappointment with some of my clients. when they're looking for my help, because they expect instant success, right? They expect their post to just take off. And it's never going to happen unless you build the foundation. And
Yep.
we can talk about the foundation, but essentially it's about having interested people who will coalesce every time that you produce something, right? You could call them the tribe. So that's the first point I wanted to make. But in terms of LinkedIn, it's just a target-rich environment, because there are people there that are entirely interested about doing deals, getting ahead, and making something of themselves. And and I think those are the primary motives. But the audience is also there because there are people there who have the equivalent interest, and they're all trying to GSD, right, get shit done. And even though there has been the Facebookization of LinkedIn, that also is a good thing, because it's more eyeballs, and then it's more scope, it's more variation on the content theme, right? You can talk about whatever you want now. It can be aspirational, it can be deeply personal. So the Facebookers have come over to LinkedIn because they realize, this is where the action is. And initially, I was very, I'm not so sure about this, right? Why am I seeing this cat video? But then if a ton of people are interested in seeing cats performing tricks or whatever, then of course it's an audience, right? And why not? So it's target rich. What else? I was going to say something else. I just lost my train of thought. It'll come back to me.
LinkedIn is just wonderful. It really is. Like I think the amount of features, and like you were saying, it's not turning into Facebook, but it's starting to get feature rich like Facebook is. Their groups are still letting them down badly, but a lot of the features are there, so it's more user friendly, which is making more people migrate over to it, but without all that fluff. Like, I don't know about you, but I hate going onto my Facebook now, because by the time I've scrolled through for a couple of minutes, I'm lucky if I've seen anything from anyone I actually care about anymore.
Yeah, I'm very sort of surgical in my use of Facebook. So I think 95% of the time I spend on Facebook is mostly to do with the community that I've built there. Yeah. The LinkedIn Action User Group Heroes, which seems very wordy and unnecessary, but I actually came up with the acronym first. I realized that the L had to be in there for LinkedIn. I thought LinkedIn Action. Oh, I know. If I build something around laugh, that might be kind of fun. So that's exactly what I did. I started with laugh, and I thought, okay, LinkedIn Action User Group Heroes, got it, nailed it. And then people have joined that community, and I've only recently started to say, hey, by the way, guys, thank you for, I call them heroes, but I also say, thanks for joining Laugh. And then a lot of them go, oh, I had no idea. Yeah, that's a wordsmith for you. That's what wordsmiths do. So yeah, Facebook is exclusively, my own use of Facebook is for that community, and I don't really spend much time on the content. But yeah, groups, we could go there. LinkedIn groups. That's why I built on Facebook, because it was kind of my wee way of saying, hey, listen, sort yourself out, because if you've got 900 or so LinkedIn obsessives are not coalescing on the platform they love, then maybe Houston, you have a problem, right? So Liam's in the chat. Hello, Liam, my good friend. Stefan, hello. Pointing some of these good folks out to you. I'm sure you're aware of them too, Megan.
Yes, I'm seeing them all come up. They're very excited to hear from you tonight.
From us. Yes, they're excited to hear from us.
Look, I've got a couple of fairly successful only two groups. I've got a few groups on LinkedIn, but there's two that are actually working quite well. But oh my work to try and get that community working. Whereas Facebook, like you said, it's set up for it. It's much better. And I guess you're using Facebook perhaps similarly to the way I'm using Instagram to try and educate people about LinkedIn. And I'm using it as a funnel to bring them over to the superior platform, I guess you could say.
Yeah, absolutely. You're dead on about how Facebook makes it so easy to run a group, but also to maximize the engagement. And you've got to think that this stuff is not hard, right? It's not hard to structure a group in a way that the community is just going to swell and is going to interact. So perhaps it's something to do with money, right? LinkedIn never felt that the group's product could be a great product for the revenue. Maybe that was it. Maybe they just focused on content and decided, you know what, we've got a lot of people posting. Why do we need to do anything else? We'll just keep on, we'll keep on adding to that particular fire, add fuel onto that. But yeah, so it's a shame. Certainly, it's a shame because LinkedIn Groups is where I started. That's where my education started. I joined LinkedIn, and then the first thing I would do was build groups, and it blew my mind that I can build any community around any subject I want, and grow it would. By the way, some of these grew very quickly without me having to do anything at all. In fact, LinkedIn Groups, still the ones that I run, are still growing, which is quite weird, right? Even though there's all this negative PR around groups, there's still every single one of mine is growing. So yeah, it's a strange situation. I call content, certainly content around posts, I call that the pop-up groups. So every time you write something, there's that there's that possibility of people coming to that post. And then the thing I love is not just the interaction with me, but the interaction with other folks in the discussion thread around around a great post. I absolutely love that. Yeah.
Talking about that, let's touch on pods, because I absolutely hate pods. I had a bit of a blue with someone recently who tried to invite me to a pod, and then I realized some people that I thought had some really great engagement were in a pod, and I was really disappointed. Now, you have done some amount of research to the back end of LinkedIn and how it actually works. You're testing it to within an inch of its life. Can you just please tell people, it's one thing for me to say, don't join a pod, it's just stupid. Can you talk to us about why we should not join pods?
Right. So before I go there, I just want to I want to examine why people might want to do that. And I think it's going back to what I was saying about LinkedIn being target rich and there being so much possibility and potential, for getting stuff done. And I think people, there's something about, humans, that we're looking always to maximize our time, certainly to be super efficient, and maybe cut corners. And I think, that's part of the cutting corners mentality. How can I hack this? And pods are an attempt to hack the LinkedIn algorithm, I think, but in a bad way, because fundamentally LinkedIn hates any kind of gaming. They just can't stand it. They don't like click and bait posts. They'll do everything possible to deter this maybe natural inclination for some humans to try and hack or cut corners or game. So what do I mean by pods and gaming? Well, for folks who are listening and perhaps don't know, pod is essentially it's an engagement collaboration between a bunch of users who have decided, okay, we are systematically going to get together and game the algorithm, and we're going to do this by posting our content, just our content within the pod, at specific times during specific days, and we're going to alert everyone that we've done that. So as soon as it's been published, everyone in the pod will know, and they're all supposed to converge on this content, this pod members' content, and then they're supposed to react and comment as quickly as possible within certainly the first 60 minutes, the golden hour. And in doing so, it's supposed to signal to the algorithm that this content is of interest. Now, a number of problems with that, but the first thing I think is that I think the algorithm is smart to understand, or at least to detect, when the same, 40 or 50 folks are all trying to do that on a regular, systematic basis. I think the LinkedIn algorithm could possibly spot that. And I also think that it's artificial, because I think when you've got that going on, I think it's forced sometimes. And I'll give you some insight on this. I ran 2 pods about 2 years ago, because I always experiment and try new things. And the bigger one was around 60 or 70 people at the end of the day, and I found a number of issues. The quality of the content was not always, what I would usually set for myself. And so there was always, not always, but there was sometimes a reluctance for me to comment on anything that I didn't think was reaching that threshold of quality in my own, my own measurement. And then the other thing was that not everyone was a LinkedIn guy or gal. There were some people in other spaces, and I felt it was difficult for me sometimes to add a meaningful comment because it wasn't my wheelhouse. Yeah. That was the other thing. So quality, not my wheelhouse. And then I also started to think, is this experiment worthwhile? Is it working? And it didn't seem like we were actually igniting the algo with comment or reaction fuel. It didn't seem to be happening. And in fact, I felt that it was actually harming us. I felt that the LinkedIn algo had spotted what we were doing, what we were up to, and was not throttling, but not giving us the extended reach that we were hopeful for. I mean, that was the whole point of doing it, frankly. And around about this time, when I was coming to these conclusions, one of the pod members basically let me know that LinkedIn was investigating pods. And I thought, well, that's no good. So I got in touch, and I was lucky that I got a straight response, probably because I asked a straight question, which was, look, I'm running a pod. Is it against any LinkedIn rules? And the response was, yes, it is against our policy. And then, the person said, and it's this part of the user agreement. And that part of the user agreement was essentially anti-gaming. And as soon as I had that confirmation, I went back to the other pod members. And I said, okay, guys, we're done. And this is why. Because anything that messes with, I use LinkedIn to pay the bills. Anything that messes with my livelihood is a no-no. So I closed it, and that was it. But so I think in terms of the artificial boosting, I think it goes back to the overnight success comment. It's going to take time for you to build up traction, to build up visibility, and to build that tribe. And I don't think there's any way to make that happen in a shorter period of time. You just have to keep doing it, and you have to keep leading with value. And that's your brand. Is you lead with value. And I consider myself incredibly lucky because I exclusively write and share knowledge about LinkedIn. And in theory, everyone on LinkedIn should be interested in that, right? Because it should all be relevant to folks who are trying to get stuff done on LinkedIn.
Oh, yeah. I mean, since polls came around, you were a very early adopter of polls. I was doing plenty of happy dances on Instagram when they arrived, because for me, it's data, it's insight from my exact audiences, from the people that I want to hear from. So it's brilliant, though it does get abused, and there's some horrendous polls out there that you're like, I don't care what you had for breakfast. This is not
right.
But look, just to finish on the pods, I mean, I say it, and I'm a nobody. I am not an expert on LinkedIn. I'm just an avid user that tries to help my clients on there. You are a LinkedIn expert, in my opinion, whether you call yourself that or not, but it came direct from LinkedIn. It's against the rules. No pods, please.
Yeah, exactly. And then, I hear horror stories about, pods that are charging to be a member of the pod. It's like, what, really? I mean, how does anyone A, think that's a good idea, and B, sign up for that? I mean, it's just anyway. So desperate measures, and trying to get stuff done quickly. But polls, I agree with you entirely. Polls are an incredible engagement tool if used correctly. Right, so it's asking the right questions, and I was lucky enough to get I wouldn't say early access, but I got them. It seems like a week or two before most other folks, and I breached in and thought, I've got to test this to the within an inch of their lives. And so I did something like 80 polls in a like a week or a week and a half. And I was getting silly with some of them because I was testing, and I needed to see what people hated and what people loved. But I particularly like now, these days, Megan, I particularly like the yes, no, or the true, false, because a lot of people just can't deal with having a binary choice. and it's like, oh, I really need a third. I just don't feel. I feel I need to say more than just true, false, or yes, no. And that's manna from heaven in terms of engagement, because then they feel they are compelled to comment. And it's like comments. We know how important comments are for the algorithm. So, yeah, and there's one that Dorothy Dalton did a couple of days ago, and it was all about. Goodness, blanking, early morning. Yes, it was the notes, right? It was, thank you, Megan. it was, taking notes during the interview. And she had three options, and one was like a merged option, right? The C or the number 3 choice was, either way. I just thought people are not going to love that. I mean, it could work in terms of comments. Right. Yeah. So I basically stole it. I said, all right, look, I'm going to use the exact same question, but I'm going to give that binary choice. And I said, taking notes as a candidate during interview, good idea or bad idea, right? 1 or 2. And I mean, perhaps I was surprised. I mean, currently, and there's still some time for it to go. It's a 1 day. I think it ends today, but I think there's something like 80% or so of folks are saying it's a good idea to take notes during the interview, which, I don't know, maybe I'm old school or not enlightened enough. Maybe this is just some kind of progressive mindset. But I don't get that, because every interview that I've been on, it's all up here. It's in the noggin. And I'm like just absorbing everything. And yes, I'll write everything down after. But during the interview, I want to be totally engaged. I don't want to even be looking down for 1 second to scribble something down. I want like them to understand that, I'm certainly absorbing, recording, and I'll record, but not during. During, I want just to be 100% present. And so, for 80% of folks, and it's over 1,000 votes so far.
Well, I was one of your 80% that said it was okay to take notes.
I mean, that's the other thing about this, isn't it? Is there's no. I mean, there are a couple of things. There is, exactly. There's no right or wrong, and so that's probably what's driving people crazy. Is like in comments, is a lot of people are saying exactly that, and they're saying it depends. Yeah. And I think that's obviously the nuance in this. There is, especially with that question. So polls I love for the engagement. I love for taking a read, getting a measure on. And then, what I've started to do recently is that the weird thing about polls is there's no closure, right? Because of the way that posts are set up. It's not like you get a notification saying, Andy Foote's poll has closed. Here are the results. Right, LinkedIn should do that, right? Because they kind of disappear, and then they're kind of hard to find as well. Yeah. I mean, the save function is kind of janky. It's not ideal. So what I've started to do, Megan, is I've now started to do another post after the poll's finished, and then I bring the results, and then I add comments, and I pull out comments that are either for one or other of the options, and so I tag those folks. Which is my way of saying thank you for participating, and then giving closure. I think LinkedIn needs to do more on that front. And polls back in the day when they first came out, you may recall, but they had more demographics, they had more stats, which is kind of strange that they took that away in this this second coming of polls. And I think the other theory I have about polls, why now, is that they didn't have an algorithm that could help keep polls like with the distribution and help keep them in check. So now the algorithm, the algorithm can kind of sort that out for LinkedIn, and that's possibly why they brought them back now.
I actually really like what it is you're doing with the resurgence of the polls when you take it for the second time and you're pulling out some of those best comments, because it helps with engagement, obviously, and with a lot of my clients, especially, I've been on LinkedIn for about 10 years. I don't know how long you've been on for, probably since the start as well. And
similar.
Yeah, and so basically I'll say to them, there's no point posting too much content until you've got a bit of an audience, because you've got this great content, there's just no one to see it. You need to spend more of your time engaging with people who have already got a party started, basically, which is essentially what you've got, because you'll have hundreds of comments on most of your posts, if not thousands, I'm sure, sometimes, if it's something that goes bananas. To be able to pull that out and be part of the conversation, and then get a second run when someone like Andy goes and links you into that as well, you're going to get much further than trying to like push your own stuff and you've got 4 or 5 people doing your survey or doing your poll, that engagement stuff. So what's your recommendation for your clients when you're working with them and they don't have the kind of following that you have? They may actually only be signing up for LinkedIn for the first time. How do you help them navigate that at the beginning?
Yeah, so there are a bunch of different techniques that I recommend. For example, you've got to build a network for sure, and you've also got to understand that once you build the network, you're never really going to know for sure how engaged they're going to be or how active they're going to be, but you have to build it nonetheless. And I think you've seen this too, that most people on LinkedIn who are serious about LinkedIn are in expansion mode, right? There are very few people I know who are still of the school of thought where they essentially only connect with people they know. In real life, right? I mean, when was the last time you heard that, or you reached out to someone and they said, "Yeah, sorry, I can't connect with you, Megan, because I only want to connect with people in real life that I know." And it used back in the day that was quite common. These days.
That used to be my thing with LinkedIn. Was I had to have known you, even if it was over email. I had to have at least had a touch point in the real world with you.
Right. So that standard seems to have been loosened considerably. And back in the day, you'll know this too, that LinkedIn would strongly would recommend that you only connect with people that you know, which was always a head scratcher to me, because I thought of LinkedIn as this amazing place where you could just build it and they would come. Yeah. And that you could build it virtually. That's what I was going to say. That thought that I lost earlier was that these days, we're all virtual, right? Because of COVID. So everything is done, or most things are done where you don't have any human contact. So it's why, LinkedIn Live is a success. It's why we can, do this kind of thing, and it's the standard. But so build it and they will come, I think is still true. We're all in expansion mode because I think we all realize that if we're serious about LinkedIn, that it's all about the potential, and you exponentially increase the potential by always adding new people to your stable. So that's rule number 1. You always be in expansion mode. Rule number 2 is you've got to be picking people that you think there's a reasonable chance that they'll be useful to you and vice versa. So, how can you help them and how can they help you? You've got to be thinking about that. You've got to have some kind of policy, some kind of rules in place that dictate that. Which is always a bit of a gamble, frankly, isn't it? Because, I connect with you and I'm thinking, yeah, she's going to help me in such and such a way. It may never happen. But so LinkedIn has always been about that potential and that possibility. So, for example, I'm always interested in connecting with people that are in my field, right? Certainly my function, right? So they're coaches, they're all about LinkedIn, absolutely. They're perhaps in the career transition side of things. Perhaps the resume writers, right? The career coaches. I'm interested in those guys too. We have quite a lot in common, and I've dabbled. I've done some of that too. I've helped folks in transition when I worked with Challenger Graham Christmas, who started the outplacement field in the US in the 60s, like Mad Men, similar. That movie. I forget. I think, was it George Clooney? I know. Anyway, so look for commonality, people that you have something in common with, for sure. Think about proximity. is there once we have a vaccine, 6 to 9 months perhaps, is there that ability to actually sit down and have coffee or lunch? That's important. And then mutuals, right? Who do you have in common with, Megan McNeil, right? Does she run in the same circles as you? So that's obviously another consideration. So these are some of the things that I encourage my clients to look at. And that boils down to the connection request. A great connection request would have commonality screaming from it. For example, dear Megan, or hi Megan, to be less formal, we're both a member of X community on LinkedIn, and I know that community sucks right now, but I would love to connect with you and provide you with direct access to my network. So that's important. That second part is basically saying, look, it's not all about me, it's what I can do for you. And if I've got a large engaged network, then perhaps that's something of value to you. But you can look for commonality in a lot of things. Dear Megan, hi Megan, I love that comment you made the other day on Andy's post. I 100% agree with you. I'd love to connect and provide you with direct access. And this is another thing that I don't know if it's a trend, and I sure as heck don't like it, but people sending connection requests without a note. I receive a lot of them, and over the past 2 weeks or so, like no notes. I mean, what's going on here? Is it just like, are people just fishing and just thinking, yeah, I'm just gonna not send anything out to Andy, not explain why, so forcing him or her to come over to my profile. So I want the profile visit, and I want them to do the work when I send the outreach. It's like, what? How is that?
Is there any benefit to that though, with how many profile views you've had?
So
that?
I mean, it's to me, it's as useful as views on content. It's like they're impressions, right? They're not clicks. I wish that LinkedIn would give us some honest stats, right, instead of the views, because the views are kind of, who cares? And I think similarly about profile views. I think profile views, if you get a reasonable amount of profile views, I think that just signifies that you're active on the platform, right? I think that's it, bottom line. Because in terms of GSD and getting stuff done, it only really matters if those views materialize into actually, in my case, people becoming clients, your case too, right? Unless that happens, it really doesn't matter how many. I mean, sure, you'd love to have a certain amount of, churn, a certain amount of people looking at you. But Megan, I usually try and figure out how people found me. And so I usually ask, particularly if they're close to becoming a target, close to becoming a client, I'll say, by the way, how did you find me? And then that lets me know which piece of content is working hardest for me. And it's usually content. So it's not, I looked at your profile and I liked your profile. It's not that. With me, it's usually, that thing you wrote about the algorithm, that kind of sealed the deal.
It's interesting you say that though, because engagement is king, comments are king, likes are likes, but really what we want is people either sharing or engaging with our actual content. I find that, it's a lot of it's vanity matrix, a little bit like, I got so many likes on it, and I've stopped caring about that. Mainly because I think a lot of my network here, especially in Perth, is quite passive. They will look at the content, and I will have in real life conversations with people. They'll say, "Oh, I saw you posting about such and such," or "I saw your live with whoever," but I would never have been able to tell that they had been on it. Same with clients. I'll get clients who will email me, and it'll become apparent later on down the track that it's been LinkedIn, but I would never have known that they had been anywhere near my LinkedIn.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, the lurkers, there's obviously, there are obviously millions of lurkers on LinkedIn, and they only stick their head above the parapet once they want something, and once they've done their research. So, as out there and as prolific and mouthy and opinionated and extrovert as I am, I understand that there are many, many more people who are all more interested in, their day job, for example. Yeah. And if they because this is my day job, obviously, but I also have to constantly remind myself, and you probably do this too, is that, my use of LinkedIn is just not normal, right? It's not standard. So what's standard is people have a busy day job. They'll keep an eye on stuff on LinkedIn. They'll come in, deal with stuff, and then get back to their day job, and they won't spend every waking minute on this platform. So I have to constantly remind myself about that. And what's always interesting to me is the amount of people who are on the platform at the weekend. There's clearly there's a contingent of people who think, well, I'm not doing anything. I just see what's going on LinkedIn, or I'll check my notifications. And LinkedIn at the weekend is seems to be a different mindset.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I love LinkedIn as well because much like Pinterest, you don't actually have to be a user of the platform to be able to use the platform. There's lots of people who don't even have a LinkedIn profile that will be checking out people because, it's got such a high authority. If I was to Google your name, it's more likely that your LinkedIn is going to come up than your website or anything else, just because that's,
yeah.
compete with LinkedIn. So I do love that as well. I think I just think there's so much possibility on LinkedIn for others, for people who aren't using it like you and I.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that rams at home, doesn't it? You do a search on Google, and maybe the first result, usually the first result is your LinkedIn page. Then that I think that should reinforce just how important LinkedIn is, and certainly in terms of your branding, and that you need to get full control of that and make sure that you're controlling what people think about your page.
Yeah, definitely. Now, I think we can both completely agree that in terms of building your brand, whether it's a personal brand, a business brand, LinkedIn is a must, in my opinion, and I would say definitely in yours as well. Let's talk a little bit about your personal brand and how did you end up being the LinkedIn guy? How did that start?
Right. So, I think it started like this. It started with me being a stay-at-home dad and looking after my bairn. And so she's whatever in the cot, and she's fairly immobile in the early days and mostly sleeping. So I'm on the couch and I've got the laptop open, and I find this thing called LinkedIn. I think, what's this? Interesting. And it was about the same time frame, I think 10 years ago too, for me, you mentioned. And about this time, I'm thinking, wow, this is amazing. So I become consumed by this website called LinkedIn. And I'm not an early adopter by any means, because I think it was 2003, 2004, and I did this, like 10 years ago. And then, like I said, LinkedIn groups were fascinating to me because this was something that I could build. These were things I could build, and then there was the immediate engagement and people joining, and then we could talk about that particular subject that I'd, built the community around. Fascinating. And fiercely competitive even then, because there were some groups that I built that weren't growing fast enough according to my assessment. So those that weren't growing fast enough, I would ask if anyone wanted to take them over in the group. And there was probably some groups out there that I started that are now doing wonderfully well. But I started them, and so that's where my education began. That's where I got to understand how LinkedIn worked. And then once I started to learn, I started to write about how I felt LinkedIn worked. And then I got, quite preachy and quite opinionated about certain things, often branding related. And I started writing. And my early writing, I'm glad, has kind of been sort of hidden or kind of been, lost in time. Because it's just hard to find unless you go into my website and you search on it, and I'm glad that it's lost and it's covered in dust, digital dust, because it wasn't the best. And I think I got better once I realized that if I write the way that I speak, right, the way that I communicate normally, then that does a couple of things. I think it makes me a more engaging writer, but it also enables me to find my voice, my true voice, the way that I faithfully express myself. So in the early days, I think I was too much of a wordsmith and in love with the big words and the vocab. And then I started, just keeping it simpler and wanting really to engage and to really simplify some of this stuff and distill it into, terms and sentences that everyone could understand and hopefully appreciate. So I wrote this one article, 3 stunningly good LinkedIn summaries, and I sort of fell in love with the word stunningly, and I kept on using stunningly for a number of different articles. And something interesting happened with that post. They're all indexed, right? And whenever you write something, it's indexed by search engines. But this was indexed and then pretty quickly landed on the first page for 2 specific searches. And I had no idea what I was doing back then. I had no idea about search engine optimization or search engine marketing. I had no idea. But I got very, very lucky because at that precise time, people were looking for great summary examples, one search, right? Or good stunningly good LinkedIn summaries, or LinkedIn summary examples, and I had both of those covered in that title. And as soon as it got on the first page, Megan, then I started to get this huge upsurge in traffic to my wee blog, linkedinsites.com, and it continued to ramp up, and I was getting thousands of visitors sometimes 2,000 a day, right? And I was like, this is crazy. So that put me on the map, and that essentially started my LinkedIn consulting business. And what was slightly different about that article too was I was using real life examples, which no one else seemed to be doing at the time. I was using screenshots of real life stuff that people were doing well, and they explained why I thought they were doing it well, and particularly, in this case, the summary section, now called the about section. So I highlighted 3, and I explained why I thought they were stunningly good, and then, that's the rest is history, because then I started to do the same thing. I wanted to capture lightning in the bottle again and again, and I wanted to make sure that I was giving my view, I was backing it up as much as you can, right? Because there's not a lot of data that you can point to that, well, why is it stunningly good? You have to essentially reinforce that by explaining why, and hopefully people agree, right? So I was saying, look, don't write in the third person. That's not the right way to persuade. Look how Mark is doing it. Mark's doing these one sentence kind of throwaway things. I run towards fires. Remarkable, right? Because they resonate and they're creative, and that's fundamentally what a lot of people can't seem to do, right? All they do is they copy and paste their resume, and then they're passive, and they think, okay, build it and they will come. No, you have to make sure whatever you build is really impactful. You have to think like a copywriter, right? Especially with a headline. And so there are all these different facets of LinkedIn, the profile page, that I essentially would preach about and would say, okay, listen, you've got to do this, and here's why. And I also want to be the type of LinkedIn consultant that didn't just report the news, like this has changed, all right? But so instead of the what's changed, I wanted to explain why I felt it's changed, or why something has been set up on LinkedIn in such and such a way. And I think that's the sweet spot. I think that's when people hire you, is they go for, generally speaking, they go for people that have the depth of understanding, the ability to explain the why, rather than just report the news. And so, that's my approach. Has always been like, I'm a wordsmith, I'm a marketer, and I'm someone who's certainly obsessed about LinkedIn and thinks he understands how certain things work, and more importantly, how they could work for you. I think that's it broken down.
That's the clincher, is how it can work for you, because everybody, whether they want to admit it or not, it's always what's in it for me. So when we go on to Andy's page, what's in it for me? What can I extract from here that's going to be able to help me? So you were a stay-at-home dad. You started this blog. At this point, you weren't commercializing that. This was all of a sudden you get to the front page, there's a hell of a lot of traffic coming, and you're like, I can make a business out of this?
That's it in essence, right? Google basically made me a success. LinkedIn really didn't have much to do with it. LinkedIn is certainly the foundation, and it's the platform that I became very, very interested in because of the potential. And the fact that LinkedIn forces you to make choices, doesn't it? It forces you to make lots of choices in terms of branding, how you market yourself, and it boils down to, well, that headshot or this headshot, right? Do I use the default headline or do I build a slogan, right? How do I maximize the about section, etc.? It forces everyone, right, to become a marketer, to become a branding guru, to become someone who understands, PR and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And not everyone is equipped or has the time to do that. And so that's why they hire you and me, because we help them, with these things, because they're busy with the day job, like I said. So yeah, that put me on the map. And then once I realized I was getting this huge amount of traffic, I thought, okay, that's interesting. I think I can continue to do that. I think I can, I'm confident in my wordsmith abilities, and I have plenty to say about LinkedIn, just like lots of other folks. I put a call to action at the end of every article subsequently. And the call to action was essentially, hey, if you like what I'm writing, if you agree with what I'm saying, blah, 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 then, I'm for hire. And I can help you with your LinkedIn presence. And it was as simple as that. And then, I started to get incredibly busy, and this may be your problem too, but I can't scale. So I have a very fixed time frame in terms of, here, I can help you, but you're going to have to wait because I've got lots of other people that I'm going to help too. And there are folks that can do it, that scale and that, delegate and get other people to do, some of it, but I prefer to be hands-on, and I want to help them one-on-one. And so it's a slower model.
I love that. I also I'm going through the kind of how do I scale at the moment. I did a 21-day LinkedIn challenge, which I did 3 of them just to test it out to see what people liked and what they didn't like. And I did them within LinkedIn groups, which worked okay, apart from I had to tag everyone every day to make sure they actually got the notification of the task for the day. That was great, but that was a lot of work because I had to be in every single day, and you can't schedule into groups. So you're in there trying to make sure that you're posting the same time every day, because I had people in America, Canada, UK, and Australia. So trying to fit for everyone, that was hard. So I have all that content now, and I'm going to put it as a self-paced challenge, because I just learned so much, especially the first one, because the stuff I was putting out was way too high level, because people didn't need that. They actually needed less,
right?
If that makes sense. So I think I found a sweet spot for people that you and I can help, that they just need to know how on earth to set up their page, because it's not a resume, it's a landing page. Right. It is a free landing page. People pay a fortune for pages that are set up in the exact same way. LinkedIn gives it to you for free. It has such a high authority. If you can just put in a few excellent keywords and spell your name right, you should be fine. Just make it appealing, and people can understand what the hell it is you do when they land on that lovely landing page you've created. So that's what I'm trying to do just now, is turn that so that I'm not in it, because it was hard work. It was amazing. I loved it. I learned so much, but you can't do that and service my high-end, well, not high-end, but clients are paying for that one-on-one service as well.
Exactly.
So, Andy, do you have a Scottish background? Because I've heard a couple of Scottish words in there that I wasn't expecting.
Yes, I did. I did on purpose. Yeah, I sound like a Sassenach, but my dad is from Glasgow.
Oh yeah.
And in fact, his family, the Gorbals originally. Wrap your head around that. So, yeah, my dad's dad worked in the shipyards initially, and then he landed a job with Rolls-Royce in Glasgow. And our vacations, my dad was in the British Forces for most of his career. Our vacations were jumping in the car, driving across from Germany through the Netherlands, hopping on a car ferry and driving from Dover up to Glasgow. And it was the best vacay ever, because that's all that me and my sister knew. and we would go down the shops, and I would look forward to the ice cream van coming round, and I would get a double nugget, and bacon rolls, sausage rolls,
Square sausage.
Squares, of course. I mean, I need to do a road trip. I need to get back there post-COVID. But pineapple cakes. Most of it is food related, by the way. But
Same.
Yeah. I mean, all of that. Yeah. I mean, I know. Good luck getting that in Perth. So, yeah. I mean, I romanticize about it. It was a fantastic childhood, but Scottishness is key. It's part of my DNA. I'm weird because I'm half German and half Scots, and then I've got this English, accent, which is British Forces. I think most British Forces kids sound like I do, so I'm kind of hard to place because some of my vowels are like Northern, and over here people don't know what to make of me. I mean, I get called Kiwi. I don't understand where that's coming from at all, because I certainly don't sound like
I get Canadian.
A New Zealander. You get what?
Canadian. Yeah, well, my husband's Canadian, but even before I'd met him, I used to get Canadian. I get Irish a lot, which I kind of understand because of the Celtic accent.
The sing-song. The sing-song.
That's so interesting because I am, obviously I've got the Scottish accent, but I'm Scottish with quite a bit of English in me and German as well.
Oh, really?
Yep, my dad's gran was German.
What's that?
My dad's gran was German, so
Sehr interessant. And können Sie auch Deutsch sprechen?
No, but my dad had bright blonde, like he was blonde with curly hair and the big blue eyes. And when we would go on holiday when we were younger, timeshare would come around and try and sell things, and he would pretend he didn't know English, and he looked German, so they just started speaking to him in German, and he's going, "Oh, run!" So that's so interesting.
Yeah, so that's an important part of my childhood, and like I say, my upbringing, and I mean, I loved being an army brat. That was fantastic too. But I was in Germany, could understand the language. Obviously, I spoke nothing but German as a kid because my mother was German. But fond memories of Glasgow. And then, of course, but I went to Dundee University and studied law. So got to know that city as well, and got married. Bunch of my pals from university days were in the entourage, and
that's incredible. My best friend Olivia, she studied law at Dundee as well.
Interesting.
Too many similarities here. I don't know if how long the statue's been there, but the Desperate Dan statue in the middle of Dundee, was that there when you were studying? Good question.
I'm not sure it was. I mean, on my wife's side in the wedding, I forget the girl's name, which is embarrassing. But she was opposite a good friend of mine, Brian, who's a lawyer in Dundee right now. And she said to me, Andy, I think Brian's great, but I have absolutely no idea what he's saying. Because he had this very strong, still does, very strong Dundonian accent. So what's the an Ingens and R? Twa pairs and Ingens and R. No idea what most people have no idea, but it's 2 pies and onions as well.
Oh, right. No, lost me.
Twa pairs and Ingens and R. What is Brian saying to me? I think he's a cute guy, but I have no idea what he's saying. Impenetrable, Megan.
Yes, the East Coast of Scotland, they've got some strange accents. You're better staying in the West, you're fine.
Well, it's the UK as a whole. I mean, you just have to travel 50 miles and the accent will be completely different, which is incredible and fun and interesting.
100%. Andy, it has been amazing talking to you. I've obviously been following along for quite a while on some of the amazing stuff that you're posting. So anyone who is watching or listening, make sure that you follow Andy Foote with an E at the end on LinkedIn. He's also got a podcast which is rather clever, FOOTE-NOTES. I think that's rather smart. I was impressed with that. Andy, where else can people find you if they want to get in touch or follow along?
Yeah, LinkedIn is the place to engage with me and to send me a connection request with a note. But yeah, I'm doing the FOOTE-NOTES thing as well, because why not? It's fun, it's fun to speak with people. And LinkedIn gives us lots of new toys continually, right? So there's stories and newsletters and et cetera, et cetera. So playing catch up with the other social channels. But I am so pleased that you invited me on. I think you're doing some fantastic stuff too, Megan. Keep doing your thing. But thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
No worries, and we will do this again. Hopefully, maybe we can have that reunion in Scotland once everything opens up. Good halfway
nice. Wouldn't that be nice? How many hours? How many hours on the plane?
17 for me, 24 hours from door to door. So you might get there before me.
That's insane. The thought of being up in the air in a tin can for that long, it just doesn't compute.
I don't think I have to worry about that for a while. Our borders aren't opening anytime soon. Yeah. But Andy, thank you so much. I will let you go just now so you can start your day, and I will chat to you soon.
Good night, and thanks, Megan.